Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Timber Festival 2022. My name's Jack Matthews. I'm the Geo Heritage Officer for the Charnwood Forest Geopark, supported by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. We've got a lot going on here at the Timber Festival, which is put on by Wild Rumpus with the support of the National Forest Company. So we thought we'd take a few moments to take a look around DIY Utopia, where we're based this year, and show you not only some of the programming that's going on from the Geopark, but also from some of our friends also in the area. So let's go and have a look. And as always, if you have any questions, do pop them in the comments if you're joining us live on Facebook or YouTube, and I'll try and get back with as many answers as I have, or maybe our friends who will meet along the way in the next 15 to 20 minutes will be able to help us out. So do pop your comments in the chat, but let's go and have a look at what we have this year in the DIY Utopia zone, because there's a lot going on. As you can see, it's a hub of business, lots going on. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to see our friends over in Hartwood, where those of you that joined us recently for the Charcoal Burners weekend will recognise this not only wonderful contraption, but this wonderful man, Kev, from Hartwood Community Wood Fuel Group. Thanks for joining us again, Kev. And do you want to run us through what are we seeing here behind us?
Okay, well, this is a charcoal retort, a little bit different to the traditional charcoal burners, which were ring kilns. Ring kilns use an awful lot of wood to convert some of it to charcoal. This machine behind us, it's choking us at the minute, uses very little wood, uses scrap wood to heat the heating element inside that machine there, to convert the rest of the wood we put around it to charcoal.
So a very efficient production of charcoal, and a great use of the forests that this great event, this musical event is celebrating. Now, what happens to the charcoal afterwards?
Well, we're a voluntary organisation, and we need to get funding from somewhere. And part of our funding comes from the sales of charcoal.
Shall we move up?
Yeah, we thought it was a good place to start, didn't we? But it wasn't ultimately. We get funding through grants, and we also get funding through the work that we do in woodlands. We're generally a woodland management group, but as part of that woodland management, we create quite a lot of timber, and we convert an amount of that timber into charcoal for sale, and it brings us quite a good income, really. The increase in home-produced charcoal is there now. It's taken some time to get a market for it, but we are getting there, and most of our charcoal, or all of our charcoal we produce, gets sold now.
Excellent. So you lit this, probably only, half an hour, 45 minutes ago.
That, yeah.
So how long will it keep going? We can see one of your friends there is stoking that in the middle there, and the rest of the wood is being gently cooked. What's going to happen over the next few hours?
Okay, well, there's two stages to the process. So where you saw a colleague putting wood down the chimney, that chimney eventually ends up in a firebox as an L-shaped tube, and that's the heating element in effect. So we put wood down there, scrap wood, pallet wood and the like, to create the heat, and we have to do that for about 2 hours. And after 2 hours, there's enough gas coming off the wood itself that we're converted to charcoal to drive the process itself, and that takes about another 2 hours. So end to end, it's about 4 hours to convert that amount of timber into charcoal, and then we leave it overnight and empty it in the morning.
Wonderful. And Andy, the cameraman, let's take a spin around, because we can see a bit more. You can see the fire that's being stoked in the bottom there. And then at the moment you can see, and am I right in saying, Kevin, that what's coming out this little mini chimney at the top here, that's mostly steam, isn't it, at the moment?
It is mostly steam, and what we have to do, as I say, after about 2 hours, that steam will turn into a bluer smoke, and that means that the wood is converting to charcoal, and that's the gas. And then you probably see on top of the burner there's a little disc. The disc goes on top of that to block that exit for the gas, and the gas is driven down into the firebox, and it sort of self-propels itself with gas.
So it's a bit like, I always think of it like a bit like distillation, which you learn about in chemistry. Different temperatures, as it warms up, that steam's going to get driven off, and then that wood gas is going to come out, and you're going to capture that to help the combustion.
Exactly. And when the wood gas is burning at its most intense, the whole of the tube is on fire, and there's a plume of flames coming out the top of the burner as well.
And it's very, we're having a very authentic charcoal moment here. Just to say, of course, that we're not only working with Hartwood for the event that's just happened, the Charcoal Weekend, but if we have any local Charnwood Forest primary school students, parents, or indeed teachers watching, there is the opportunity to go on a school trip to learn more about charcoal, which is an important historical industry for Charnwood Forest and has many interesting aspects, be it the history or the art that you can do with charcoal or the science, which I'm particularly interested in. You can learn all about this on the newly designed Charnwood Forest Geopark field trip, which is being offered to schools with the great help of Hartwood, the team here. So if you're hearing that now, why don't you go and ask your teacher if you can come and do the charcoal field trip up in the outwoods just outside of Loughborough. And you've got a few other things here, Kevin, haven't you? Can people come and buy a bag of charcoal?
Yeah, they can certainly buy charcoal from us. Our woodland management group, say they're all volunteers. We've got about 115 members now. And as you can imagine, with that number of members, there's quite a lot of diverse interests in woodlands, from making all sorts of carved products to making the charcoal, obviously. And the majority of our members come to the group for firewood. So we've all got log burners. We volunteer in the woods, spend a day in the woods working hard, and then we take a boot full of logs home for our log burners.
Now, I know if people want to find out more, they can find you on social media if they want to join in the fun. The one thing I wanted to ask you is, why should someone, if they're planning a beautiful barbecue, why should they use Hartwood charcoal or local charcoal in general, rather than the generic stuff that you might get a briquette packed up in a bag? Tell us about that.
Yeah, there's a few benefits to using our charcoal. I think the most obvious one is it's produced here, and we sell all of our charcoal locally. We don't do post or delivery over mail sort of thing. But the quality of the charcoal is the main benefit of using this type of charcoal. The charcoal that comes out of here is 100% carbon and burns very easily and very hot. It's got no additives. Briquettes use all sorts of impurities to make the briquette solid. So although our charcoal appears a little more expensive on the surface, pound for pound, it burns longer and burns hotter. And we've actually got people who use our charcoal to cook directly on, so they don't even use a grill. They cook directly on the charcoal because it's so pure.
Well, there you go. For the most authentic charcoal culinary experience, you need some local Charnwood Forest, or maybe a little bit broader into the National Forest charcoal. Thank you so much, Kevin, again. We're going to have a little rove around the rest of the area to guide you around all the other things that are happening. Do we want to go and have a look at the table too? We're going to walk through the cloud of smoke here. Well, this is mostly steam, remember. And just a reminder that you can get your £8 bag of barbecue charcoal from the great team here at Hartwood. And there are also everything else. You can, a pack of artist charcoal there, and even a wand. I'm not sure what magical spells can be cast by these wands, but for the magicians and witches and wizards in the audience, perhaps there's something for you there. Right, we're going to rove over here and have a look at our... Well, it's not ours. We have many friends here in the DIY Utopia zone, and one of them in this area, we have the campfire cooperative sessions. Some of it, these are being given by our friends in the Geopark, some by our friends in the National Forest Company, and some we've got storytelling, we have little musical numbers. It's a great spot to come and sit around the campfire, have some conversations and debates about different topics, particularly around the environment and ecosystems, geodiversity. If anyone is watching this and is here, you can come and see me talk about geodiversity on Sunday evening, and you can see an event here has just finished, but there's a wonderful vibe here of lots of discussion and debate, learning, stories and facts about the forest. And I don't want to get in the way of the lady who's speaking now, so we're going to continue roving around in the DIY Utopia zone, to our friends in the caravan bar, because keeping your speakers, particularly there's a lot of speakers here, you have to keep them well drunk. And we're going to meet our friends from the caravan bar here. Remind us, who are you?
I'm Steve, one of the owners of the caravan bar.
Welcome, Steve, because it's important that we not only learn about the forest, the trees that are in it, the things that live in those trees, but also the rocks that are underneath there, but we sample the forest as well.
We do. We're from Macclesfield in the Cheshire area, so our local gin distillery is Forest Gin. So we brought the Forest Gin to the forest, as well as purveying loads of local beers from another one of our local breweries, Bollington.
Super. So if you happen to be watching this and are at the Timber Festival, do pop down to the caravan bar, where you can sample not only a distilled version of the forest, but some fine ales as well. White Nancy, a local landmark if you're a local to Macclesfield, and many other brews from the Bollington Brewery. So it's all here in DIY Utopia in the Charnwood Forest Geopark and Friends Zone. Thank you very much, Steve.
My pleasure. Come along and say hello and get a drink. Come and say hello. We'll have a giggle.
Well, I shall certainly be back by my talk. After we're gonna go over here first to the actual Charnwood Forest Geopark zone. We've got a lovely A-frame here. And what's going on at the moment is our friend and colleague Susan Kilby, who's the education officer here at the Charnwood Forest Geopark, has just given a talk on how we make inks from natural products. You may remember we did a previous video on oak galls, which are parts of an oak tree that's had a wasp egg laid in it. They forms sometimes a little marble-shaped rounded oak gall, and sometimes forms a knobbly oak gall called a knopper gall, and those can be crushed up and used to make a very, very permanent ink. And this was a very important industry historically, because it was very good for writing important documents. And so we've got lots of people at the Timber Festival here who are learning all about how that's been made. Susan's just cooked up a fresh brew of knopper gall ink, I think it was. It could be marble gall ink. But also different barks and different flowers can also be used to make a varied colour of inks. And our dear friends and visitors here are learning all about that. So this is just one of the many things that we're offering here from the Geopark. And if we rove over to our little board, I can be reminded of the various things we've got on today. So you can see we've just had the Charnwood Forest What's in a Name talk, again by Susan Kilby, learning about the history behind the place names of Charnwood Forest, be it Barden Hill or some of the field names around Whitwick, Corn, and some of the various place names. You can all learn there's a great history, and it tells us what these places were used for. I should say many of the topics we're giving talks on here at the Timber Festival are also available. If you've got a community group or a school that would like a talk on these topics, we'd be more than happy to visit you as well. Then we've got Colours of the Forest, which is what's going on right now. We also have Chirpy Charnwood. Don't run away, Nicola. We'll be coming to speak to you in a moment. Chirpy Charnwood, which is creating a collaged bird with the artist Lucy Stevens. And more on Lucy in a moment. And then at 1:30, but also again tomorrow, you can come and learn about Charnwood Forest rocks, the geological history of the great area of Charnwood Forest. We've got a very special guest joining us later today at 2:30. That's Dr. Frankie Dunn of the Oxford University Museum of Natural History, who'll be telling us about the fossils of the forest, the amazing 565-million-year-old fossils that are found in our area that represent some of the oldest evidence of animal life anywhere in the world. We've also got willow weaving with Nita, and we're going to find a little bit more about that in a moment. And at 4:30, geological jewels. Another piece of artwork that's been made by Emily Hett. The one thing that's not on here but is offered twice tomorrow is also our talk on pebbles. So if I'm going to give a beginner's introduction to pebbles, you may have noticed these as you wander the fields of the Great English Midlands, and we're going to give you a bit of an introduction to what those are about. But just before we go and see our various art installations here, I just wanted to remind you that if you've got any questions or comments, do put them in the comments on YouTube or Facebook, and I will try and answer those as quickly and as best as I can. But we will first go over here and see what is one of the most fascinating pieces of art that I have seen in a very long time. This is, for the paleontologists in the audience, you will recognise this straight away. This is Charnia by Nita Rao. You may have come across Nita Rao before. She's based in Loughborough, does a lot of work in Willow, and has contributed a great deal, especially to the sculpture trail in the Outwards, which I should say is still open. And if you haven't been yet, you absolutely should. It's absolutely spectacular. And then behind me, you can see this absolutely amazing creation. I think it must be more than 7 foot tall. And this is, as someone who studied this organism from 565 million years ago, I must say it is an absolutely fantastic replica of what this thing would have looked like. One of the oldest animals we know of. Of course, it wouldn't have been 7 foot tall at the time. The usual specimen is about 20 or so centimetres long. We find some smaller than that, some a little bit bigger as well. But what a wonderful recreation in a forest style of one of our oldest animal ancestors from 565 million years ago, named after Charnwood Forest. And when it was first discovered more than 50, 60 years ago, it really did change our understanding of evolution. We didn't think life went back that far. We now know life goes back way further. But this discovery in Charnwood Forest in Leicestershire really changed our view on evolution and started a kind of gold rush to start hunting for other fossils in this area. So, not only in this area, I should say, but in rocks of a similar age all around the world. So next, we're going to rove back round the front of our little A-frame, and we're going to rove round to one of the other bits of art, which you can see on the trees around here. We've got these wraps on the trees. This is A Band of Birds and Insects by Lucy Stevens. And we talked about Lucy earlier on because she's going to be giving a talk later today. And this is another one of the pieces of art here. We've got 3 being led and put together by our dear friends at Charnwood Arts, our arts partner here, also funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund through our Landscape Partnership Scheme. So big, big thanks to Charnwood Arts. Here you've got a bit of authentic charcoal smoke blowing through these. So do come and check out Lucy Stevens' work as well. Another commentary on the forest and a wonderful way to display it here as you weave around visiting the various areas in the DIY Utopia zone. But what we're going to do now is go and see another piece of art, and I'm going to hope that Nicola might be able to speak to us, because the third piece of art we've got here in our area is another one that's geologically inspired. This is Geological Jewels by Emily Hett. You might have come across some of our work with Emily before. We've talked about Emily before, a great friend of the Geopark. And as you can see here, there are 5 different jewel types. These are done in Emily's characteristic ceramic style. And each one of these 5 jewels represents a different rock type that can be found in Charnwood Forest. So at the bottom here, we have, for example, Markfieldite. This is a 560 million year old microdiorite that can be found, surprisingly, around the village of Markfield. And you can see that the layers here are arranged to represent the various layering that one can find amongst the rocks in Charnwood Forest. So we've got a bit of Markfieldite, we have some Ediacaran sediments, and what's fascinating about Emily's work is you've got a representation of what the layers look like in outcrop, and if we cheekily twizzle them around, you can also see Emily has represented what these rock types look like under the microscope, because we can look at all these rock types under the microscope. We have some Cambrian slate Swidland slate, very famous for its use on roofing and also for gravestones and many other things. In the orange, reds and yellows, we've got some Triassic sediments, these sandstones that were deposited 240 million years ago. And at the top there, some glacial pebbles from the last 450,000 years. But these are all arranged to represent the various layers we can see in Charnwood Forest. So we've got our Ediacaran sediments here, and then our Markfieldite has intruded into the bottom layer here. We've got our Cambrian slates that come across, but then they're truncated off. And you can see that our Triassic layer gets thicker over here because it has been cut down into a Permian valley, which was made about 260 million years ago, as this landscape was shaped by erosion and then filled in during the Triassic a few tens of millions of years later with these lovely layers of Triassic sandstone. And then, of course, that layer of glacial pebbles, the most recent geological deposit we have in the Charnwood Forest Geopark. I think you'll agree, an absolutely fascinating way to represent the geology. Wonderful work by Lucy, Emily, Nita. I'm going to try and pick on a colleague here who's just finished up because why not? We have the power of the microphone, and so we're going to come in. We're live, everyone. Hello, Nicola. We're live. Come and have a chat. Come and have a chat with us. Come out here and tell us about. I just want to learn a little bit more about the wonderful artwork. We've just been for a rove around, and tell us a little bit more. We've been to see Nita and Lucy and Emily's works. Tell us about, how did you put this all together? Your friend, we should say, Nicola is our friend from Charnwood Arts. Got the stash on. Tell us, how did you curate it? Because you're really the brains behind bringing these wonderful works together.
Very kind, Jack. So Nita, Emily and Lucy are all associate artists of the Celebrating Charnwood project, which is Charnwood Arts' partnership with Charnwood Forest Geopark. And so Nita, Emily and Lucy have all been working with lots of different community groups over the past year, just over a year, and we've been collaborating in different ways. And as you'll know, we've started to bring in collaborations between the arts and the science elements of the Geopark. So working with yourself to start bringing some of that geological interest and also the ornithological, if that's a word, interest in the wildlife and the flora and fauna that's significant to Charnwood Forest into these artworks. And so all three of the artists have been working over the past few months to create these pieces specifically for Timber Festival as a result of lots of the work that they've been doing with the community groups over this time period, but also as part of a more deep collaboration with the Geopark and its unique identity. So you'll find minerals and rocks, you'll find animals and wildlife, and you'll find a giant willow charnier just to the back of me, made out of willow by Nita Rao.
Wonderful. So if you want to find out more about how to get involved with Charnwood Arts in general, or indeed about the three artists that are represented here today, or the broader work that we're doing with Charnwood Arts, pop onto the Charnwood Arts website, go onto the Celebrating Charnwood page, that's the one, isn't it?
Correct, yeah.
And you can find out so much more about how to get involved in all of these things and so much more. Thank you once more for joining us for a live session from the Charnwood Forest Geopark. Today, of course, we're slightly outside the boundary of our geopark, but we're selling the important message of Charnwood Forest, the unexpected upland, to people all around the country, and I'm sure from even further afield too. So thank you for joining us once more for a live. If you've got any questions, but no, wait. Now Emily's here. You've got the one of the artists has just turned up, so we've got to speak to Emily. Emily's going to come on. We're live on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. Hello, Emily. This is Emily, who has done the wonderful geological jewels. I tell you what, we'll rove around this. If Andy stays where he is, we'll rove around and we'll get the thin section microscopic view. I want you to, while we've got you here, tell us a little bit more about your piece. What was your inspiration? Why did you come up with this? Why did you pick this?
So I suppose we wanted to show kind of more about the geology of Charnwood, and I suppose art is a really good way to kind of translate that information, and it's sort of hopefully has like a captivating element for children and also for adults. So the colours and kind of the medium as well, ceramic, kind of reflects the geology, but also hopefully is nice to look at and engaging for the community.
Well, it certainly is for me, and I hope it is for everyone else. I think it's an absolutely fascinating piece. Couple of questions. Our viewers might have noticed that on the macroscopic side, that is the side that kind of represent what the rock looks like if we were to walk up to it in the field. That's nice and shiny and glossy. And then on this microscopic side, you've left it with a matte finish. Was there any kind of meaning behind that? What's the thinking there?
So there was two main reasons. The first reason is it was good to like see the difference basically between like so people could easily distinguish, but also actually when you're firing the clay, if you have kind of a shiny glaze on the underneath, it actually sticks to the kiln shelf. So I wanted something that could be viewed from both sides. So to do that, I would need to have one side matte and one side kind of shiny. So yeah, it worked two ways to provide a contrast and also for the kiln purposes worked best.
Well, there you go, an inside scoop on how to make your own ceramics. And if you want to know more, of course, you can contact Emily, contact on Instagram.
Yeah, Emily Het Art, that's my Instagram tag.
There you go, you can find out a bit more about ceramics. And a final question, of the 5 wonderful jewels that you've made, do you have a favourite, and which one is it?
It's the Mark Fieldite.
It's the Mark Fieldite, the 560 million year old igneous rock that we saw. I'm going to be cheeky and turn it round because you've seen it like this on the glossy side. But for the geologists in the audience who might have seen a rock like Mark Fieldite down a microscope before, you will note that this is a very accurate representation of what's called, and here's your technical word of the day, a granophoric texture, which means that the minerals, rather than being blocky and against each other, are all kind of intermingled, the feldspars and the quartzes, which Emily has so accurately represented there. Absolutely wonderful work. Well, Emily, thank you for jumping in at the last minute.
It's all right, thank you for having me.
Wonderful, and we will see you again as I call up my phone so I can press the button. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us live once more. Thank you to Andy the cameraman and all the friends that we've met along the way. And if you have any questions and you're watching this on replay, pop them in the comments and we'll try and get back to you with any good answers. So see you again soon for another Charnwood Forest Geopark live update. And we're still live because I haven't pressed the button. So if Andy could press end, and we'll see you again soon.